Joining me now with perspective on everything from the Apple versus DOJ case to the fight against ISIS, Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA and NSA. He's also author of a new book called Playing to the Edge, American Intelligence in the Age of Terror. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
First of all, on the Apple case we just heard about, this back and forth about Apple and kind of holding its ground.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on this, and how important is this back and forth, this battle?
Yeah, this is really important, and we need to settle it, and honest men differ. These are about virtues, security, privacy, liberty, and safety. On the broad question, Brett, that the FBI asked Apple to do months ago, which was this universal backdoor into all their encrypted products, I'm with Apple. All right? I actually think American security, I know there are privacy arguments, but I'm speaking about security, narrowly defined. American security is better protected with unbreakable end-to-end encryption. All right? Look, I used to work with backdoors. When somebody put a backdoor into something, the odds of my success as director of NSA went up. Now, that may actually be different from this single isolated phone we've got in San Bernardino. And Tim Cook is arguing that if I do this, it's inevitably going to lead to that. I'm not convinced of that yet. And the burden of proof is now on Apple to show that giving in here leads to this end state here, which I agree with Apple. That's a bad end state.
The other thing the Attorney General talked about today was this investigation into the emails and Hillary Clinton's email server. I've heard you say that the original sin is the worst. If you are a foreign government, knowing what you know, could you get into that email server? Would you be targeting that?
Would I be targeting it? Absolutely. And frankly, the summary statement, Brett, is I would lose respect for a whole bunch of signals intelligence organizations around the world if they had not successfully penetrated that server.
You're pretty confident they did.
Yeah, I mean, it's what people do. It's what adult nations do to one another. It's an R-rated movie.
And the security they could put on that would be different?
In terms of
protecting the server.
Well, look, first of all, as I said, the original sin is the sin here by setting it up this way. If she had done this on a State Department server, the responsibility for defending it would be the United States government's. That's not the case here. It's her responsibility. And again, I would move. Look, if I were still out at Fort Meade as director of the National Security Agency and someone told me, oh, pick a foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov had his even unclassified emails on a private server, I'd move heaven and earth to get access to it.
If you were in Hillary Clinton's shoes right now, would you be worried about an indictment?
Look, I saw your story and Catherine's report there. The good news for me is that Jim Comey is in charge of this. I mentioned in the book that Jim and I didn't always agree on things, but he was an incredibly principled man. This investigation is in good hands. I
want to ask you about this ceasefire with Russia and what's happening in Syria. You know that that place is spiraling, and it's a terrorist safe haven and kind of generating a lot of terrorist activity. How dangerous is this situation in Syria?
It's very serious. What you've got is a terrorist safe haven and frankly, chaos. Not at some isolated corner of the world like perhaps Afghanistan, as bad as that was. This is in the middle of the Middle East. I mean, this chaos straddles the ancient caravan routes of the Middle East. And because of that, it's easily exported, and we've seen that. And what you've got here now, the president is right to be doubtful or skeptical about the ceasefire because poor Secretary Kerry, what leverage does he have? I want you guys to stop fighting, and if you don't, I don't know what the rest of that sentence is.
Secretary Kerry was testifying today, and he was asked by Senator Lindsey Graham about the Russians going after the people we trained, the CIA trained in Syria. Take a listen.
Were you surprised when the Russians went into Syria using military force to bomb the people we trained?
I was not surprised.
Is it fair to say that the Russians have bombed the people we've trained to oppose Assad?
Yes.
Is Libya a failed state now?
It's close. If they cannot get themselves together, yes, it will be a failed state.
Two issues there. Not surprised that the Russians targeted our people.
Right.
And two, that Libya is essentially a failed state.
It is a failed state. I know the Secretary kind of hedged a bit. How failed do you have to be to get into that category? There is no government. And with regard to the Russians bombing our guys, yeah, look, the Russians may be indirectly interested in ISIS, but fundamentally they're putting their chips on the Bashar al-Assad regime, and they are fighting the people who are most threatening Bashar al-Assad, and that's what we call the opposition.
Last thing quickly, how do you look at this Republican race in a different hat?
Yeah, these are complicated issues, and I'm afraid we have lowered them down to the level of bumper stickers. That scares me, and it's got to scare our friends around the world.
The book, it's a fantastic read. I've gotten through about half of it.
Thank you.
And I recommend it to everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.